Welcome to this little lightning talk on OKD. I'm Jaime Magiera from the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research, ICPSR, at the University of Michigan.
And I'm Michael McCune. Actually, we'll just advance.
There we go.
I'm Michael McCune. As it says here, and as Diane alluded to, I'm a community roustabout and general code monkey. I'm also a software engineer at Red Hat, where I work on OpenShift as part of the cloud infrastructure team.
And so a little bit about OKD. So for folks that aren't familiar, OKD is the non-subscription-based OpenShift distribution, and it's community maintained and supported, meaning the documentation, technical support, and a lot of the same channels as OCP. It's built from the same source as OCP, and Mike, you want to talk a little bit about some of the features and whatnot?
So it has the same general features as OCP, but as we mentioned here, it does not have all the same operators as OCP. And what we mean by that are not the core cluster operators, but more the marketplace operators that you might expect if you have an OCP subscription. Then you might see different operators than what you would see on OCP. Do you want to talk about the releases, or should I keep going here?
Keep going.
All right, cool. So we have new releases every few weeks, and we're going to talk about a very exciting feature in a minute here, the OKD Streams, which are going to help us to deliver those. And it's very timely because we had a very exciting release today. Some of you might have seen on Twitter. One of the other big differences between OKD and OCP is that OKD can be installed on Fedora CoreOS and CentOS Streams CoreOS, whereas OCP is installed on RHEL CoreOS. And then lastly, what we are seeing in the community is that OKD is being used in a variety of contexts, anywhere from home labs, people doing experimentation, to production, running in research institutions, like the ICPSR.
Right, I see. It's funny. I laugh about this because we do this all the time. So ICPSR, CERN, and a lot of research institutions are using OKD and tailoring it to their specific needs. And so what have we been doing, right? So lately, in terms of community updates, we now have OKD Streams Tecton build pipeline. And we'll be talking more specifically about that. We've changed the focus for what was a documentation subgroup to be a community development group, and we're hoping that this really helps foster community participation, increased community participation in OKD, and creates a really quick feedback loop. So we actually have meetings that alternate between technical and between community development so that we have both aspects taken care of. We've moved our Git repositories off of sort of the Red Hat group and into our own organization in GitHub, so that we're now, all of the resources are community managed, and we have access controls on that. And we started a video tutorial series, and you can check them out on our blog. And actually, Mike, why don't you actually talk about one of the videos that was made in the series?
We started a video series, and what we want to do is get engagement with the community and share what we know about OpenShift and OpenShift operational techniques and things around that. So myself and a colleague from my team, his name is Dennis Moisiev, we did a video about how you can get into debugging issues around OpenShift and OKD. So what we showed the OKD deployment release page, and you could see where failed releases had come through, and we showed you how to drill through a failed release, how to find the bugs that were happening there, and then where you would go to fix those bugs. So if you look on the blog, you can see the video about that. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to help educate the community about what does it look like when there's a failure in our build process, and then how do you debug that, and how do you understand kind of the infrastructure that we've created, to run our tests, to run our release automation, and those kind of things. So I'm thinking about a lot more of these videos. I know other people in the community are as well. So stay tuned, because I imagine we'll have more content that will teach you about kind of the details about running OpenShift, around getting in there. How do you figure out these processes and whatnot? So yeah.
And one of the things that we did that I think is really important for defining direction is we did a community survey. And we got a lot of information back. We'll talk about that briefly, but that was an important thing, is actually reaching out to the community, conducting a survey, and finding out what the community wanted from us.
So OKD Streams, this was like, very timely. We just had an amazing release today. It's kind of like at the last minute coming in here. We got a release published, it's on Twitter, and you can see this link at the bottom here goes to a blog where we're talking all about this. But what are OKD Streams? What are we trying to do here? So we're using some of the latest, Tecton build pipeline technology that we're working on so that we can create automated builds of the OKD release infrastructure. And this is kind of where we're starting with this. And right now we have it running on the Operate First cloud. And Operate First is a really cool initiative where we're, kind of doing this open operations. And if Karsten Wade is around here, search him out, find him. He's got a lot to talk about there. But it doesn't have to run only in the cloud. You can also run this locally. So if you want to produce an OKD release of your own, whether it's just the standard upstream sources, or maybe you want to modify those sources, you can use this build pipeline locally to create your own release artifacts for OKD. And then this is where we're bringing in the CentOS Stream Core OS. So this is now, we're building on top of that. And like many of the other OpenShift deployments, except for the RHEL, the RHEL specific ones, this is an RPM OS tree-based distribution, so it's an immutable, kind of operating system. It's very similar to Fedora CoreOS and Red Hat CoreOS, but this is the CentOS version of it. So I told you a little about what OKD streams are. Why did we build them? And there's some really big reasons here, especially as OKD becomes a more full-fledged community project and we're building more community around it. We need to have the ability to experiment with OKD. And you can imagine, I'm an engineer who works on OpenShift day in and day out, but if I want to create a really big experiment, let's say I want to do something radical and just disrupt OpenShift, doing that in the release pipeline is not going to work. So I'm going to have to bother a lot of engineers to kind of set up an alternate release pipeline and everything to do my experiment, which may or may not be valuable at all. When we can start doing this in the community, we're going to unlock the ability for community members to start creating experiments and to collaborate in the community so that we can say, well, let's say, the group I work with, we maintain the machine API right now. And how many, show of hands, who's familiar with machine API if you're running OpenShift? Anyone in here? All right, some hands coming up. So machine API is the layer that interacts with the infrastructure beneath OpenShift. There's an upstream project called Cluster API in Kubernetes. Show of hands, anyone heard of Cluster API before? Okay, some of the same hands going up, some new hands. So what if I, as a developer, want to replace Machine API and switch to Cluster API so that now OpenShift can look more like what's going on in the community around Cluster API? That might be difficult to do inside Red Hat, but in the OKD community, there's now a space where we could start to do these experimentations. So a very radical change to OpenShift could occur there, and with these OKD streams, we can use that to test it in the community. So we have the ability to experiment there. We also have community ownership of the CI/CD pipeline and our build pipeline. So right now, if anyone in the OKD community wants to do something, maybe fix a failing CI test or modify how our release build line happens, they need to communicate with Red Hat engineers and with Red Hat owned properties in order to make those changes. By moving the CI into the community, we get the ability to start creating our own tests, to modify tests, to bring changes back to the upstream OCP to us. Then we can say, hey, look, we found some problems in these tests. Here's how we can contribute back. And then lastly, this is a very forward-looking build pipeline. So we're modernizing the process for building OKD. We're using this new Tecton pipeline. It's going to allow us to not only build these releases we're talking about, but it's going to give us this ability, like I was saying, to really vary how we're building these things. And now we can use, Tecton artifacts that are inside of Kubernetes to just build new releases as we need them. So it's not a complicated process of setting up new infrastructure and creating new build processes. We just create new Tecton artifacts, and now we can have new build pipelines. So yeah, I'm really stoked about this. Check out the blog post there. There's going to be a lot of exciting stuff coming there.
And I want to talk a little bit about the community survey, some of the details of it. And this survey was taken, we posted it about 6 months ago or so, and have been gathering information since. The most popular version of OKD is 4.10 by a strong majority. This was really heartening to see that so many people were adopting the latest versions available. Usage, and this was a multiple choice, so it's not adding up to 100%. 47% were home lab people. We're using it for home lab. 59% are using it for development. 51% using it for production. 51% of OKD usage doing in production, that's pretty cool, right? The largest feature request was more operators, right? So there's a handful of operators in particular which are available on OCP that are not available on OKD, and we've been working to hash out those issues, and we're looking for community involvement to hash out those few issues that are keeping those from running on OKD. The biggest challenges that people shared with us were related to upgrades and documentation, which of course go hand in hand, installation, upgrades, documentation. And so we're taking all of this feedback and trying to really improve the way in which the experience of looking up documentation and the videos factor into that, and also the upgrade process, and trying to really improve it so that you can make those jumps from minor version to minor version without some of the pain that has been felt in the past.
You want to talk about what's ahead? Yeah.
Sure. So what do we have on the
Mr.
horizon? We've got full availability on the horizon of OKD on FCOS and CentOS Stream Core OS. More walkthroughs and video walkthroughs and blog posts. Improved technical documentation, like I talked about. And fostering community experiments with these build pipelines. As mentioned, these build pipelines are available, these Tecton pipelines. You can go to them, utilize them, build upon them, experiment with payloads as well. We're going to be posting something, but in fact, we're going to be getting a blog post from a member of CERN about how they modified their payload for OKD. And community run CI, so people will be able to run their own CI and participate in running of the CI. And we're getting our own email, we're getting things configured in such a way that you can email us directly to the co-chairs of the OKD community. We're also going to have a security email address if a security issue comes up. And folks will be able to communicate with us if there's an issue in the community that they want us to address or anything like that. So we're actually, I think, really growing into being a full open source community-based project. And we're defining a continuous process of survey and feedback, conducting a survey, making changes based on that, conducting another survey, making changes based on that. And our meetings are on Tuesdays at 1700 hours UTC, and these alternate. We've got the technical meetings, which are updates on releases, updates from the dependent projects. We have folks from the FCOS community showing up to talk about what's happening there, et cetera. And we have discussion of outstanding technical issues. Then we have the community development meeting, which is updates on our communications, the blog posts, the videos, et cetera, and discussions on how we can take all of this information and facilitate more community involvement.
You want us to take some questions or anything, or?
I've got one question.
All right, cool.
One question came in. And again, thank you both very much for all of your dedicated work on the OKD Working Group. I'm really happy to be able to have it in your hands going forward, so that's great. Someone was asking about CentOS Stream Core OS, if there is a FIPS mode for it. And I believe the answer is no.
The answer is no. So here's the thing. It can be done, but so FIPS is a process of getting certified that you're using, and in some cases not using, certain cryptographic artifacts and processes. There's a lot of paperwork involved with that and a lot of back and forth to get FIPS certified. So although we could say, yes, you can turn off or turn on particular algorithms to in essence be FIPS, FIPS certification is going to be a big community effort. That's not a no to it. It just means we need more people on board, and we would need to define a regular process, right? Because if you're going to get FIPS certified one year, 3 or 4 years down the road, you don't want to lose that certification. You have to get recertified for that.
Yeah.
So we would have to define a process.
It's a tremendous lift
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that probably the long answer was, boy, it would be nice, but probably not, because the release cycle is pretty fast too. So then that's part of the ethos of these new build pipelines, and one of the reasons we did CentOS Stream CoreOS is because we wanted to get a faster release signal for RHEL 9 and for the RHEL teams, for how OCP would eventually work on that. And so by having cutting these releases and builds for CentOS Stream CoreOS, the idea is we'll be closer to RHEL 9 at CoreOS and be able to give the RHEL team feedback as well as early warning signal for the OCP team, so that we can make sure that when we do deliver the new products on new releases of RHEL CoreOS, we're ready for it. So there is on the OKD project page and at okd.io, there's a blog. We would love it if you would take a look at what is the MVP, and it is really minimal viable product or project. It is the first, it came out this morning just as I was waking up. They managed to...
Very timely.
Very timely. We call that just in time for a conference development, which is usually what happens at major events, that we push something out. But I am, again, I'm going to say totally grateful. There's a lot of folks out there that did some great work on the OKD Stream stuff. Shireen and Luigi, Christian Glombeck on the customer-facing engineering teams really went to bat. The folks from the Fedora CoreOS team and the CentOS Stream team for CoreOS, especially Timothy Ravier. There were some late nights put in over the weekend. So take a look, give them a little bit of appreciation, and if you do get a chance, take it for a test run and give us some feedback, because that's really what we're looking for. Because this will feed back right back into that OCP products and all of the services we're doing really quickly. So it's really been my pleasure to work with you guys. Thank you very much.
And I want to say something to the question that came in from online too about the FIPS, right? I hope, Jaime and I have showed everyone here and everyone online this kind of window of where we're going with this community. Like, we are trying to build more community power in here, so people can experiment, people can build things. So if FIPS is something that's really important to you, come help us build it, or tell us how to build it, or just give us your thoughts so that we can know how to go to the next step, right? So hopefully that's what we're building here, and this is really going to become like an exciting community just to do more of these kind of things.